Do you allow your mood to dictate how you show up day to day? In this episode of Carlie's Couch, we talk about how to be a little bit less reactive.
Hello, hello, hello. Happy Monday or whatever day it is.
Welcome to Carlie's Couch. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for all the reviews, the 5 stars. And if you haven't left a review or a rating or haven't in a while, please do so because we like to read those and share those with others.
And also, please share us with a friend.
Yeah, like you tell us that you like the episodes and we love that. But also feel free to share them so that we can reach new people with our episodes.
Europe. So this week's question from the couch is, what is the last thing that made you cry? Lexi, what's the last thing that made you cry?
I don't remember.
That's real.
I was trying to think. I don't remember, child. And maybe it might have been some like relationship type thing. I don't know, or just like not feeling heard or feeling frustrated. But I get a little more cryy when I'm like in one of my hormonal phases. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I don't know, but probably something just like being aggravated. What about you?
Same with the hormones, but I would say either a hormonal
like,
time.
I can't take this no more. You're not doing what you're supposed to do. And be like, all right.
Whoa.
I'm just crying, write my little notes up and keep it moving.
Man, keep it moving. Because
it's going to be fun in 2 days.
But I would say that, or probably like random grief hits, like missing my mom, something like that.
Yeah, the random grief hits do be getting you for real. And that's what some of the folks said. People said their friend passing away, thinking about their father, which maybe I'm going to kind of assume maybe something happened there. Hormones, for sure. It's so funny how we women can, like, you just get more teary during hormones. My friend just cried, and I lost hella bread at his wedding. I lost $10 to Lance Gross. I lost $5 to one of his friends that went to SCAD. I was over here making side bets. Well, everybody was. We were making side bets, like, is he going to cry during the wedding? And I was like, no, he ain't going to cry, I promise. But then during the wedding, he did the thing where he turned around so that he wouldn't see her till she started coming out. And as soon as he did, I was like, oh, he going to cry when he turned around. And he turned around and he started doing a little teary. So I was like, dang it. I looked over, and Lance Gross was like, yeah, I need my $10. And on the way out, as we exited out, I was like, I'm going to take this 10. I had slid it. Actually, I took 5 out of my boyfriend wallet, but to add to my 5. And I was like, I take this. And then I found out later he has a gambling problem, so sorry about that, Kyle. But yeah, I imagine, like, I love when men cry getting married, because, like, that is kind of serious. I feel like love and getting married is way more serious for guys, but that's another topic.
Yeah, but that always, like, makes me, like, oh, when the guys start crying. That's my favorite.
When Mr. Tough Guy start crying,
man.
he be like, dang it.
That's my favorite.
Anyway, I was mad.
Some other reasons are a movie, life, because life be lifing, and then Beyonce. I got that twice. So people teared up at the Beyonce concert.
Because it's, like, so excellent. It's just like, wow, how can you be this excellent every other day? It's crazy. Like, why are you not tired?
Bro.
And then, like, movies, music, sometimes, like, movies do be hitting. Sometimes I'll look for, I think I've asked this on Twitter before, and I have a little list, like, yo, what's some movies that made y'all cry? Because sometimes you just want to watch something emotional. And there's some ones. So.
Bro, also some shows, because I remember, because I can only opt in for so much additional, like, trauma or life things, sometimes outside of life. And
This Is Us.
Yeah, This Is Us, boy.
And I forgot the name of that other one where the guy, their friend, killed himself in the first episode. But, like, then after, like, 4 seasons, it got goofy. But I was like, dang, every episode was like, God, something happened.
So if I needed to process and I couldn't quite figure it out, I would just watch This Is Us and start bawling and get through my emotions.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. So, yeah, it's okay to cry, guys. It's good for you. I think sometimes, too, because I used to not cry rarely, or I cried rarely. So, but I started realizing, like, okay, like, when I cried, and it's when it seemed kind of random, it's like, I just needed to, like, release something. So, like, I started embracing it. So, I like when I do cry now, but, yeah, and then that's why I like trying to watch the show every once in a while, because it's like, it feels good to, like, just release that.
It is such a beautiful release. Yeah. So take your time doing that.
Yeah.
Speaking of emotions and releasing, we're talking about emotional reactivity today. And we're thinking about, like, episode topics. We always try to do things in our lives. And something that I was just thinking through is, like, are my everyday actions like based on like how I'm feeling in the moment, like what am I doing, or is it like an underlying thing of discipline? So that's kind of how like the long meandering path that got us to today's topic.
I feel like Chris talking, what the hell did you just say? So you've been questioning your own reactivity.
Yeah.
Okay, I was ready for you to throw me under the bus. So I'm very reactive.
I'm gonna let you do that yourself.
My partner, my friends, Kyle, he was like, you be turning up too much, but like he turns up with me, so it's cool. But I don't really realize that I do that, because when I do that, and so by reactivity to me, and what I do is like somebody might say something to me, and I'll immediately just be like, yeah, but da 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 da. Like I'll get hyped, but I'm not necessarily like super angry or anything. I just need to release more with it, and then I'm like, okay, cool, and then I'm good. But it's too much reaction, and I think it reminds people, like if you have a mom or a parent who used to be like, sit down, and like yell at you and stuff like that. It makes you feel. It can make people feel little. And I'm just saying what they said to me, child. I don't know. And it can make you feel like somebody's trying to like be commanding on you, and like it makes you get small and like just shut up and be quiet and shut down. So that's what I heard, but
it definitely interrupts the flow. It can interrupt the flow of conversations.
Yeah, now
make people shut down. You can't come back, because we be like,
you can't have a conversation no more.
I'm also reactive, but apparently, like I don't always be mad or anything. I just like am reactive, I suppose, and I get louder or whatever, and then it's always like, yo, why you be so loud, or whatever, and I'm like, just interact, but then by then it kind of ruined the mood. And
yeah. That's the thing. And guys are so weird too, because they always act like if you get a little hype, then it's like, okay, we back. Like I'm cool now. Yeah. So what's the problem? And now it's like, nah, you had attitude. Okay. Anyway, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how reactive would you say that you are?
I'm swinging at like a 7.
That's
and
pretty.
a half.
I think that's a little high, but you might have another little side.
Well, so what about say? I'm thinking like my more reactiveness. So in like partner situations, it's probably with him that I get the most reactive.
But I think we should think about it with everything too. Like in general, because I'm reactive in like client meetings too. At one time I had to like go off camera real quick, 'cause I was like, I know this. It was like a client, and like I had talked for 15 minutes explaining a document. Then she butted in talking about something totally random for like 10 minutes. Then to be like, okay, but what did you say at the beginning? I wasn't listening. I said, hold on 1 second. I was like, hey, yo. I was like I was saying, I was like, bro, come on. Like, and I think also, I think it could be different also for women sometimes, and for black people or other people of color, because it's like, don't disrespect me. Like, you would just being a white woman right now. You're not fucking listening to me. And I think we could sometimes get to a point where it's like, I'm not about to just sit here and let you talk however, right? Or act like you don't have respect for me and what I'm talking about, what I'm doing. So I think sometimes it maybe becoming more reactive or like that can be something that when you finally come out of feeling like, okay, everybody's always talking to me, then you kind of finally come out of that, and now you're like being more expressive or feeling less concerned about how you come across, because I need to get my point across. Just like when I'm walking on the sidewalk, like I don't move for people, because it's like,
I don't.
Y'all got a whole lot of people. You either gonna run into me or you gonna walk around. Like what are you doing? So I think sometimes we can kind of become a little more bullyish, and I think that's what's happened to me, because I didn't have parents that like yelled at me or reacted too much like that to me, but I did feel like I didn't really have a voice. And so now I like extra have a voice. And it's just not always healthy for particular relationships that I do want to cultivate.
Yeah, I think that's a very fair assessment, and similar a lot from my side. I think a lot of it does come from culture, upbringing,
you just
trauma.
Get fed up at some point.
Bro, yeah.
And it's like, I'm not about to take this.
But also maybe you come from a loud house and you just got to be loud to be heard, or you're fighting to be heard over all the loudness and what's going on. There's just different things. But I do think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, like sometimes it makes you get loud, or sometimes it makes you be a shut down person. And it's so interesting, because I think I tend to end up with people who are more like shut down people, while I'm being extra. So, and there's some weird thing about how that connects because, you know, people be looking for their mama and whatever. Anyway, but I would say that I'm probably like maybe an 8.5, maybe a little more, just because I do feel like I'm pretty bold with like.
Yeah, and I'm going to hold my 7. I brought it down a half, but I'm going to hold my 7.
But yeah, that what it looks like to me is just immediately responding. I'm going to get tight. So even, I'll probably get a little louder. But if I don't get loud, it's in the delivery that, all right, so da-da-da-da-da-da. Or I might start mocking, like, are you serious? Or, like, I'm a, dang, I guess I kind of hurt people's feelings a little bit. But that's what it looks like for me, is just immediately hopping to, I don't know, it's just a different tone.
I'm about to say, yeah, mine is definitely vocal, like loud, like whether in volume or in sharpness. I also make faces immediately about anything. I remember when I was in business school, everybody would look at me when somebody said something stupid or off the cuff or whatever, because they knew I was going to make a face, and I don't be catching it. Be like... Yeah,
that's what I get called on, too, is... But I don't like that, because that's when I also think sometimes people are being emotionally over-responsible, when it's like, if I ask a question, I go like this, and they'll be like, or not. And I'm like, no, you don't have to change your answer. Like, especially if you're like, where do you want to eat? And they, Chick-fil-A. And I'm like, Like, that doesn't mean, like, that's a wrong answer. And yet, from the other side, I completely understand, because if somebody does that to me, then I'm immediately like, okay, well, then what do you want if you're going to make a face about everything I say, right? So it can't go both ways. And so you do have to recognize, like, half the time, the same things that people are doing that might bother you be doing the same thing. Like, it will bother you the other way around as well. And yet, with the reactivity, I feel like sometimes when I'm going from, like, 0 to 100, like, I don't mind you also, like, turning up. Like, it bothers me more when you just shut down, because it's like, oh, now you don't got nothing to say? Like, speak up. Like, we talking now, speak up. And then it's just, like, shut down, because this reminds me of my parents. So, it don't work. It don't work.
I feel the same. And I think that, okay, so even if you might not be emotionally reactive in the same ways that Lexi and I are, or if you don't see yourself in that, here are some other signs that you might, in fact, still be emotionally reactive. So, are you offended at the slightest little things?
Yes.
Are your reactions often out of proportion for the situation?
Sometimes.
Do you explode on other people? Do you frequently storm off in a cloud of self-righteousness when things aren't going to your plan?
I'd be pissed. I hate when people don't do things the way I would do it. And that's my biggest problem, too. Because I'm like, see, if I was planning this, I would have knew what time. I would have knew where we was going. And then I shouldn't have to be upset about that. So I try to remind myself, like, it don't matter. But, like, I feel like people don't put the same care into things when they don't do it the way I do it. And the way I do things is the way I do things. And it's the right way. Anyway.
Do you believe circumstances have caused your reaction, leaving you feeling buffeted by the storms of life?
Circumstances cause your reaction?
Yeah, like, do you think that people or circumstances outside of you are what made you angry or ruined your day? I think that's what that means. If you get tossed about by the things that are outside of you.
For the 5 seconds, though, that's the thing. I'm definitely not a, like, oh, my whole day is ruined. Because, like, not exactly, but...
In the moment, yes.
When I turn up real quick, yes, but then it's over. I don't think I let it run my life. And then sometimes, you know, we'll overthink about a thing, and I'll let myself get angry about it. So that, maybe sometimes.
Do people find you prickly and hard to be around?
For sure.
Do you become defensive and resentful if you perceive someone to have criticized you?
Yes.
Does rage consume you at very short notice and with the tiniest provocation?
Yeah, that's what people say.
There's a theme.
It is said.
There's a theme to your outburst, but you're not quite sure what it is?
Maybe.
Do you feel powerlessness with a little sense of agency?
No.
Hard no on that one for me.
Yeah, that's the main. And yet, I'm still sitting here like, dang, I keep turning up, and I can't. Like, how do you stop? So, but I don't think I feel powerless, but also I just be turning up. So, I don't know.
We kind of talked about why we are emotionally reactive, but are there any positives to being reactive?
I think for me, like, I've become more reactive, and a positive kind of to that is, like, I'm actually honoring, like, how my emotions at the time. I just need to do it in a healthier way. So I will say that. And even as far as the why are we reactive, it's something's triggering my ego and something's triggering that I'm not getting something I want. I'm not being heard. Like something is not serving me what I want. And I'm acknowledging in this, but I need to do it in a different way.
And I think sometimes when we get caught up in the reaction, like something happens and it might be seemingly small, but we have a really big reaction. It is because there's an underlying thing there of I'm not being heard, I'm not being seen, I'm not being appreciated. There's like 4 or 5 things like in relationships and in like jobs that people react to, but it's triggered by something smaller, like the way someone looked at you, the way they said something. But really there's like a bigger issue going on.
Yeah, and when we get more into strategies on how to curb this, we'll talk about that a little more, because I do recognize those things. And I can say that. It's just that it's still a little too late after the turn up. That's the thing.
See, I don't be recognizing.
I don't know.
I don't be recognizing
like,
until after the turn up. And like, damn, that's what that was.
Actually, this reminds me that you don't pay attention to XYZ. And so this one little, actually, I have an exact clear example of this when we get to it. So, but it affects relationships negatively, apparently. Not for me, but I think that at any time that you cause people to maybe shut down, them not feel heard, again, just think about how when you don't feel heard, and when somebody's just like coming at you, right? When people feel like that, it like cuts. It feels like they're. I've been told I don't feel respected. Oop. And also, I would say that it can be in relationships, especially, it's a very thin line between partnership and it turning into like you treating somebody like that's your kid, or like turning into mom, which kills eroticism, kills desire, kills me wanting to have fun with you, right? We see relationships all the time where it just seems like they're just like, it's like naggy and like, okay, my ball and chain, the old lady said I gotta come home. Like it don't seem fun. And yet, because I want things a certain way, like you end up turning it into that. And so you have to be very careful. I think that it's really hard sometimes to just let things flow and to let people be different, let them be themselves. And it shouldn't be hard to respect people, but sometimes we have to understand that we need to deliver our needs and our desires in a better way. That's not going to seem like you're telling somebody what to do or giving them some kind of ultimatums and all of those things. It just leads to unhealthy dynamic when it comes to partnership, for sure.
Absolutely. And I think also like being newer to advocating for your needs or even understanding them and your emotions, like, It's hard. Like we're new to this. We haven't been able to do this, our whole lives, and so it's it's all a learning process. So we're here to learn together, which is why we're talking about this. Because originally when we were writing this episode, we were like, all right, so what are some strategies to fix it?
Yeah, because I don't know.
Crickets.
Even my friends like, man, you always be turning up, but like he turns up with me, so like it's a different conversation than like a partner being like, I don't feel respected, I'm shutting down, versus like and be like, you need to calm down, and like he turned up with me, but I'm also was like, okay, cool, we both turned up and now we both turned back down and we good,
and it's cool.
But I think we have different expectations of different relationships, and so that's why it's important to pay attention to that. So not pause. What are some strategies to curb being reactive? Because I keep just having to apologize and keep being like, okay, I'm working on this. But like, it's even how I just said, that's how I be talking to people, like, oh, so blah, blah, blah. But it'd be hard in the moment. I just don't.
Yeah.
And I do this thing too, and he hates it. I hang up, like, but I gotta figure out how to be like, hey, I can't do this. I can't talk no more. Something. I gotta say something else. But as soon as I feel like I'm about to turn up crazy, I just be like, click, because anything else is going to be a mess. And yet also that's disrespectful, which I would be disrespected too.
I would be irritated. I would be mad irritated if you hang up on me. Don't you hang up on me, because then I'll 0 to 1,000.
Nah, I'd be like, click.
So then I think it's great that we'll just start with this one here. The first strategy to helping you curb emotional reactivity is to take a breath and or take a break and just communicate to your partner like, yo, I'm about to turn up. I will call you back in like 15 minutes because I can't right now.
Maybe I could do that.
Yeah, but you have to practice. But also, like, I think it's important.
I always think about that after I hung up.
But you got to stop. doing that. And tell the person, like, yo, I'm about to turn up. I really need to take some space. I'll call you back in an hour or something like that. But just, I think also being like the other person, it's helpful to let them know that, yes, you will revisit it. You will come back to a conversation.
Because I will totally be like diplomatic in like 20 minutes.
People, but you gotta take that space for yourself so that you don't disrespect them. But I think it's about communicating it and forcing yourself to not do what you've always done. So take a break. Either if it's a breath before you start cussing or whatever you about to do, or before you react, or you be like, yo, I need to take about 15 minutes. I'm gonna call you back.
And now that I think about it, what sucks so much is because when I've had other partners who they weren't as secure or healthy or whatever, like I wasn't the bad one turning up, and now it's like, oh, I'm the bad guy, because he's actually like very nice and respectful, and so I'm not even used to like feeling like why am I the bad guy all the time? I'm like, why am I the one who's always talking about why am I being so mean all the time? Blah blah blah. I'm like, maybe because I'm used to dealing with mean people or like people who are not respectful or rude or whatever. So I'm usually the one telling them,
which
like,
is probably why you're so reactive.
Do this.
Like, that's probably part of the reason why you're really reactive.
I guess. But I don't think I was as I think I was the shutdown person before, though. So that's why it's kind of like, I don't know. So I think another thing, maybe once you've taken a quick breath, is try not to make assumptions about what other people mean. And with that, it's really like, when people say a thing, because I hate when people do this to me too. When I say something and then they make it mean all this other stuff, and I'm like, no, I really just mean what I'm saying. When people say something, just like listen to what they're saying. Don't try to make assumptions about, oh, this means that, and because that's when like you're really letting your triggers take over. When something being said now means 100 other things. Ask questions, listen actively. Be curious about how they're feeling. Not being defensive. Like really, I guess honestly, if I could just be quiet while they're talking, that could be helpful. If I could talk slow like I'm talking now. I just don't.
Not yet.
Until after the fact.
But I think like not assuming is a huge thing. I
turned up this today already. Like I'm gonna turn up on the tech. I turn up on whatever. It's whatever.
But like we turn up because of triggers. And often that is because of an assumption. And so, and I want to like be clear that we are not assuming things out of thin air. Like life experiences have taught us that this malintent, which is why we turn up. And
that's why guys be mad because they be like, everything that every other person she been with got her having an attitude. And it's like, yes, because niggas be lying and like, or I'm asking for a thing and the thing's not happening, and why did it becomes like everybody nuts and da 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 da, and like you're putting everything together, and it's hard, but I actually do a pretty good job. Again, kind of after the fact. If I'm not talking directly to you or on the phone, you're not gonna get as much turn up because I can think a little more when I'm texting, and I also am preferring now. I like to talk more, because I like the challenge of doing the talking, but when I have the time to think about it, I can be like, no, okay, this is this thing. It's not all of this. And I can process that. So, like, one of the things is, like, understanding yourself and how you think and being able to reframe that. And I think that has to do with also kind of knowing how you feel and your triggers. So, for example, what I was referring to earlier, while I was out of town, I passed my boyfriend my shoes, my Versace shoes, put in the closet, and he like threw them in there. And I went to the closet, and I was like, it's not that deep. But I was like, see, this is what I be talking about. And I said, wait a minute, you know what? You putting my shoes in here kind of haphazardly makes me think about the way I do things a certain way, and I like a certain standard, a certain care of things that I just feel like you just don't do sometimes. And which made me start thinking about everything. Like, if we go on a trip or something, I'm a know, like, what's the restaurants? When we do this, I'm going to do da-da-da-da. Like, I do things a certain way, and you do them different, and sometimes I feel like that means you don't care. And so, like, it was just throwing the shoes, and he was like, okay. But also, in my head, it made sense, and I knew why just this little thing. And I was like, this is not even a big deal. This does not matter. Like, boom, fix the shoe. It's not that deep. And yet, I'm telling you, that's why as soon as I see that, I'm like, you're not caring again. Like, it was all of that stuff. And I'm like, I get it. So I tried to explain it, but then when I tried to explain it, it just made him feel like unappreciated stuff. It's like you can't do anything right and all that, right? So it's like, I was like, you don't get it. But at least I understand what that was just now. And so it makes sense. And it's like little things trigger like these bigger thoughts about like just the differences between people or whatever. And yet also this was not a big deal. And so it's things like that. Like I kind of turned up even just from that, but it's because I was thinking about all this other stuff. And like, I was like, this connects to what's bothering me is like the level in which we do things does not feel the same. Mm-hmm.
And that's such a great example. There's like so many of these things, like in
essence, little things like the dishes in the sink and stuff like that, like with relationships.
Yeah, but it's not like the dishes. It's that you don't appreciate me. You don't see what I'm doing. I ask you to do one thing and you can't do it. You don't care about me. I'm not important to you. And, and then it like trickles down. And so I
think you have to know what's important to your partner though, because I mean everybody has different things. And similarly, I'm like, well, why? I would never know somebody's coming over to my house and not kind of straighten up, right? And it's like, I'm coming over and you don't want to straighten up a little bit? Like, so as soon as I walk in, I'm like, stuff all over the place. Like, and then I'm in a kind of mood, which then like rubs off, and then just starts rubbing off and going back and forth. But that's even something that like I brought up at a later time where I could process it and talk about it. And that thing be clean with the candle lit every time now. So like, and now also because now it's more cleaner than not, if there is a little something going on, it's, he moving around today, having a lot going on. Like, I be having stuff on my floor, too. But if I know somebody's coming over, I'm going to straighten up. So now, like, when it's not 100% straight, that's okay, as opposed to it's never straight. So, like, I can still try to be like, okay, this is fine.
But that's another important strategy when you're, like, thinking about turning up. So, two things there. So, is identifying how you're feeling and learning or identifying your triggers. And then with that, being able to communicate your experience with the person. So instead of being like,
I don't feel like you care.
You don't care about me. You don't care about me. You're not trying. You are so inconsiderate. So instead of blaming them, so you make me feel X, instead of shaming them, you're so inconsiderate.
Yeah, that's what I do when I come back.
You say instead, like when you don't clean up, when I tell you that I'm coming over, it makes me feel like, you don't care.
Especially when your roommate talking about, oh, he bringing somebody back to the crib and you helping him clean up. I was like, but you ain't clean up when I was coming over. Like, don't forget, and we do that too. We kind of forget, with our people, like, to show a certain level of care. And yet, in our minds, we might think, well, this is such a small thing. Like, I'm not asking for no trips to Hawaii and shit, or whatever, right? Like, it's like, just straighten up.
But the little things be the big things, though.
They really do. But in those cases, so I can have those conversations. It's just that there's been too many times I probably came over and immediately had an attitude that probably wasn't clear or whatever. And even when you walk in and at that moment be like, why is stuff all over the place? Like, it's just, that doesn't help anything, I guess. But, so that's still the part that I gotta figure out. Sometimes I could do it though. But I think what it is that I have to have done these couple of strategies already. I have to understand it. Because at first I'll see like, all right, I keep getting an attitude about a thing.
Yep.
Then I have to understand like what's really going on.
What's going on?
Once I get that, now I can express it. But in the times that I've had to turn up already, then I just turned up.
Yeah, and I mean, but that's right. That's learning. That's growth. And then you communicated it, and you are starting to see the things that you want to see. You start to see a change.
I practice having conversations in my head to understand. Like once I realize like, this is why this thing's bothering me. I kind of talk about it in my head so I can understand, like, what's going on before I try to talk about it.
Yeah, same. And, like, I think another thing is recognizing that, they might not agree or it might feel different for them. And
sometimes they just don't see that.
They don't see it, yeah. And so creating space in the conversation. Another strategy I think is really important is making sure that you're taking care of yourself. And I know we say that, but like if you're hungry, angry, lonely, tired, like if any of those things are going on, you initially gonna be on 100 off jump, like off of anything. Yeah.
And that's why I am really good too about when I know where I'm at with PMS or ovulating or whatever, then I'll know like I'm not gonna say anything about this right now because I can come at this better later. So knowing yourself too and what you might be needing is good.
Yeah, and if you find yourself like extremely reactive and not knowing how to deal with it, definitely talk to a therapist or somebody who can help you do personalized strategies for things. But I think these are pretty comprehensive.
Yeah. And I think actually talking to a therapist is pretty good in general, because a lot of times if you're a reactive person, like we said, you don't necessarily feel as in control. And sometimes you just need an outside person, because sometimes you're not going to hear your friend or your partner or, you know, whoever telling you that, because you're going to get hyped. But in a space where you're speaking to a professional, sometimes it's easier to like understand or hear what somebody else is saying.
Yeah, or even get to the why, because you might be missing it. You'd be like, no, it is because he's not doing the dishes. And your therapist is like, actually, it seems that this is because.
Yeah, like, what is that really making you feel? Like, oh, you feel not being heard. You feel not being cared for. You feel whatever, right? And that's really where, once you figure out those key things, it's usually like, oh, that's the key thing behind all of this different stuff a lot of times.
Hence the turn up.
Yeah, and then at those points, too, you got to think about, well, what can I do to make feel that a little bit more? And sometimes that could be like, oh, let me actually hang out with some friends, or do this activity, or, you know, there's other things you need to be doing too, because everything doesn't need to fall on a partner, in this case of talking about relationships.
Yeah.
And so while, yes, they need to understand, or it'd be nice for them to understand and respect, like, what makes you feel, you know, what can trigger you or whatever, not necessarily other people's responsibilities to like try to have to feel like they have to tiptoe, because again, that's kind of that weird dynamic in relationships where you want to avoid people feeling like they have to tiptoe around you and shut down around you. And so it is our responsibility too to understand what we need, and then really try to find that, and also to be able to take steps back and have the perspective, which is really important, of how bad is this thing, or how big is this thing, right? Because in the grand scheme, this is what I do a lot too. It might be something little, like, this man never calls me, but like in the big scheme, all these great things, right? And so I like trying to remember, like, okay, this isn't, why are we letting this negative outweigh everything? And even in the moment of like when you want to turn up on something, it's like, this isn't outweighing everything to be a turn up. And so always kind of refocusing back on the bigger picture is helpful too.
I think this was very helpful for me, even in talking about it, and would love to hear from y'all at Carlie's Couch on all the social media platforms. Like,
I guess I'm not as bad as like thinking about the strategies as I thought. It's just the pause,
bro,
in the moment.
But that be the main thing. That's
because my pause is the hang up,
bro. But see, mine is an initial blow up, and then I want to fix it right then.
Yeah,
and it don't be working
not trying
like
to fix it.
But then I be trying to force it to be fixed, and it does not work like that.
It don't. Yeah,
so
now you gotta wait 2 business days,
bro. Because then you done overdid it, and then you upset at yourself when you reflect later.
Yeah, so. That's fair. So let's try not to overreact this week, not blow up. Let's be calm.
Take that pause. Take that break.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to practice this today, because I'm already waiting.
Let us know if this is helpful.
Respect
Share with
your
friends.
people, though. Be respectful.
Always. Bye, y'all.
I'm going to see y'all next week. Bye.